We are not defenders anymore. We are warriors, trained to kill the enemy and break their will. We unleash you because you are the best, most powerful, most lethal fighting force the world has ever seen.
For the last several hours, analysts have been poring over classified adjacent intelligence assessments, U.S. Central Command operational dispatches, and fresh intercepts from inside Tehran's fractured leadership chain. What emerges is far more explosive than the ceasefire optimism flooding the evening news. Here is what the mainstream media is burying beneath diplomatic theater. Iran has not stopped fighting. This morning, while the ink on Trump's indefinitely extended ceasefire was barely dry on Truth Social, IRGC gunboats were already slicing through the water. 3 commercial vessels came under sudden attack in the Strait of Hormuz, one taking heavy bridge damage in a brutal strike, another slammed to a dead stop, no radio warning, no escalation ladder, no mercy. Just raw, deliberate kinetic hits executed with chilling precision. Even more alarming, multiple U.S. intelligence officials with direct access to the latest threat assessment are now telling CBS News what the Pentagon has been avoiding publicly. Iran still retains roughly half of its ballistic missile stockpile, 60% of its IRGC naval arm remains fully operational, and approximately 2/3 of its air force continues flying sorties. This is no broken military. This is a force that endured a 7-week U.S. and Israeli air onslaught and is now choosing exactly when and where to strike back hard. What this reveals, and what Washington desperately does not want the public to grasp, is that the world is not witnessing surrender. It is watching a calculated, asymmetric delay strategy unfold. And the choke point they dominate is one of the most irreplaceable waterways on the planet. The Strait of Hormuz is not just a stretch of water. It is a geographic kill switch, a narrow 21-mile-wide corridor at its tightest point, with Iranian territory looming on the northern shore and Oman on the south. The actual usable shipping lanes squeeze down to 2 tight 2-mile-wide channels, one inbound and one outbound, separated by a slim 2-mile median. Every supertanker, every LNG carrier, every container ship leaving the Persian Gulf must thread this deadly needle at full risk. In normal times, roughly 20% of the world's oil and 20% of global liquefied natural gas thunder through this corridor every single day. There is no real alternative route. The only partial bypass, the petroleum pipeline across Saudi Arabia, can handle only a fraction of that volume and would collapse under full closure pressure. The geography is unforgiving. It cannot be rerouted, engineered away, or wished into neutrality. What makes this battlefield especially lethal for Western naval power is the deadly enclosure effect. The Persian Gulf is shallow, averaging just 50 meters deep, and brutally narrow. It offers almost zero room for massive carrier strike groups built for open ocean dominance. Blue water superiority, the bedrock of U.S. maritime strategy, begins to shatter in this compressed littoral hell. Radar signatures clutter fast, reaction times collapse from minutes to heart-pounding seconds. The massive electromagnetic profiles of big surface ships turn from assets into screaming targets in this confined, target-rich kill zone. Iran's planners have spent 4 decades mastering exactly this vulnerability. They never built a navy for head-on fleet battles. They engineered a lethal system designed to turn this 21-mile corridor into an ungovernable nightmare for any foreign power that tries to dominate it without controlling the northern coast. That brutal strategic reality is hammering every briefing room in Washington right now. What exploded in the Strait of Hormuz on the morning of April 22, 2026, was a masterclass in asymmetric maritime harassment, and it demands razor-sharp analysis, because calling it simply gunboats hitting cargo ships dangerously underplays the deadly game unfolding. The IRGC Navy does not fight like a traditional fleet. It strikes like a swarm, fast, distributed, low signature. Small, high-speed fiberglass and composite hull attack craft with tiny radar signatures bristling with rocket-propelled grenades and heavy machine guns. In advanced setups, short-range anti-ship missiles. These boats cost hundreds of thousands. The warships sent to stop them cost hundreds of millions. That cost asymmetry is the entire lethal point. The April 22nd engagement sequence followed a brutally rehearsed pattern. An IRGC gunboat closed in silently on a container vessel 15 nautical miles northeast of Oman, deep inside the transit corridor, and opened fire without any radio warning. Rounds slammed into the bridge superstructure, ripping heavy structural damage. The lack of warning was no accident. It was pure intimidation, stripping the target of any chance to evade or claim legal protection. Just 3 hours later, a second cargo ship was hammered 8 nautical miles off Iran's coast at the Strait's eastern entrance and brought to a grinding halt. A third vessel, confirmed by Reuters, AP, and the BBC, also took direct gunfire before the morning ended. 3 savage hits, one single morning, under an active ceasefire. Iran's official excuse, claiming the vessels entered restricted zones without permission and tampered with navigation systems, is a calculated legal and information warfare move. It lets Tehran paint every strike as sovereign enforcement, muddying international law and complicating America's response options. Critically fresh intelligence confirms this harassment force is nowhere near spent. Roughly 60% of the IRGC naval arm is still intact and combat-ready. The boats hitting targets today are only a fraction of what Iran can unleash. They are not going all in. They are carefully rationing strikes for maximum psychological and strategic impact while keeping the bulk of their firepower ready for a sudden, deadly escalation. There is another dimension barely covered: the subsea threat. Iran's IRGC-linked Tasnim news agency openly highlighted the underwater communications cables under the Strait as a vulnerable point for the region's digital economy. This was not casual reporting. It was a clear targeting signal delivered in plain sight. Cutting those cables would cripple not just shipping, but the entire digital and financial backbone of the Gulf states in one multi-domain blow, all below the threshold of full-scale war. The battlefield is now tridimensional: surface swarm attacks, retained ballistic missile power, and lurking subsea sabotage. 3 pressure vectors, each in its own deadly domain, each demanding a completely different defense. Every senior analyst in Washington now faces the same brutal dilemma, because there is no clean or easy path forward, no matter what anyone claims. Escalate, and the ceasefire collapses. Fresh kinetic strikes could trigger Iran to unleash its remaining ballistic missile arsenal against U.S. carrier groups trapped in a shallow enclosed sea, with almost no room to maneuver or evade. Negotiate, and Washington risks accepting terms that leave enough of Iran's nuclear and military infrastructure intact to guarantee this same nightmare repeats within a decade, while broadcasting to every asymmetric foe that sustained harassment of a U.S. naval blockade actually works. There is no comfortable third option, only managed risk or accepted strategic loss. What is your tactical call? Escalate hard or negotiate from weakness? Drop it in the comments. And if notifications are not turned on, you will miss tomorrow's urgent briefing, because this fire is moving faster than any news cycle can contain.